thank you for coming. My name is Drew, and welcome to my series. I'm going to be reading from Joseph Priestley's book, Comparison of Socrates and Jesus. A very provocative title, considering that most Christians would be terrified of even considering that there was anything before Jesus. If it goes beyond the official idea of the Bible, it's I don't know why, but I found the same kind of attitude from Muslims too. Just anything that existed before, no, it doesn't exist. I don't know why, but Mr. Priestley was I don't know, he's not a doctrinaire Christian, that's for sure. So before we get into his book, I thought it best to actually talk about who he was and what he was doing and the time period that he came out of, because well, it was a period that was a turning point of whether England was going to be a republic or an oligarchy. Yeah. And he played a pretty central role, but we'll get into that. So, to begin with, of course, is when he was born, which was 1733 in West Ealing of Yorkshire. So, he's like most scientists, pardon, of the period, and that he was multi-purpose. Well, let's see. He wasn't just discoverer of oxygen. He was many things. He was a preacher. He just taught on many things. Let's see. He was an English separatist theologian. Because if you were in England in the 18th century, which he was, largely you had to subscribe to the doctrines of the Church of England. And this, of course, came out of Henry VIII and how the Venetian Empire and how it got Henry VIII to basically break from the Catholic Church, and the creation of the religious wars of that period. So, in England, of course, you had to subscribe to their doctrine, and if you didn't, well, you were treated like a second-class citizen. But, of course, you know, there was no citizens there. You were subject, right? You were a subject of the monarchy. But that's how it was described, anyways. So, anyways, it was any any Protestant religion that was not, like I said, a part of the Church of England was treated so forth. If you wanted a career in something like law, your choices were quite limited. Just put it that. So, a lot of his writings were on the importance that anyone who was not a member of the Church of England, I mean, they should have just normal rights as, right, a citizen of the country. So that was part of it. Like an English separatist theologian, natural philosopher. That's what a scientist used to be called. Chemist, of course. That was his claim to fame. Grammarian. He was an educator. A liberal political theorist, like a Thomas Paine, right? And he published over 150 works over his lifetime. And of course, his famous thing is he was the discoverer of oxygen with the help of Antoine Lavoisier of France, who was killed in the French Revolution because they stated, well, we don't need scientists. The revolution has no need for scientists. So anyways, born in 1733. Let's see. Oh yes, his education was at a place called Daventry. And dissidents, yeah, that's what they were called, dissidents. If you were like if you didn't follow the church, you were a dissident and dangerous. But that's where he got his main early education. And let's see. Yes, in 1761 he moved to Warrington to start his first job, and he taught modern languages. And of course, the grammar books at that time were so poor, he felt the need of writing one, so he wrote his own grammar book called The Rudiments of English Grammar, because he was trying to get away from the Latin that was kind of dominant at that time because of the church, right? Let's see, in 1762 he married his wife Mary Wilkinson, who was a daughter of John Wilkerson, who was an industrialist that came out of the circles of Ben Franklin, which I'll get into, because in 1765 he was introduced to Ben Franklin in London, who got him to write a history and present, well, the book is called History and Present State of Electricity, out of which came a correspondence and then collaboration with Alessandro Volta and his work on the creation of the battery. So that came out of that. And Ben Franklin is credited with getting him interested in science, which they call natural philosophy. All right. Oh yes, and because of the book and the popularity of the book, he was elected in 1766 to a fellowship in the Royal Society, which is like the main scientific body, you might say. In 1767, he became a chaplain at Mill Hill. Let's see. It's out of that and his organizing and his writing that became the Unitarian Church. And out of that, of course, he was printing numerous pamphlets about the restrictions of people who weren't, like I said, endorsed to the doctrine of the Church of England. 1773, he moved to Colney, and he became an assistant to Lord Shelburne, which is going to come back to bite him in the ass later on because of the nature of who Lord Shelburne was. Let's see, in 1774, began publishing experiments and observations on different gases, notably hydrochloric acid, photosynthesis, nitrous oxide, and of course, oxygen. 1780, he moved to Birmingham and became a member of the Lunar Society, which is interesting because, oh yes, and let's say, basically it was a group of industrialists, but not just the kind of industrialists you think of in England in terms of these robber baron types that ran these factories and the insanely horrible conditions that existed. Virtual slavery. No, this was quite something different. Let's see, the main people in the Lunar Society were Matthew Boulton, Josiah Wedgwood, James Watt, Erasmus Darwin, and Joseph Priestley. And this came out of, like I said, these networks of Ben Franklin and Gottfried Leibniz in Germany. Right? So it's interesting because their idea was creating a republic and nations around the idea that the nation exists for the people, or the commonwealth, or the common good. Right? These are ideas that came out of the Renaissance and of Cusa, that nations should exist for the people, or as Lincoln put it, of, by, and for the people. Yes, so yeah, and Leibniz and Franklin wrote about the need of scientific societies and these industrialists to basically take the ideas of these scientific discoveries and then apply them to machines, right? That's how the steam engine came about, right? Yes, so that's what he was involved in for quite a lot of years. 1782. He wrote a history of the corruptions of Christianity. Holy crap, this got him in trouble. Well, I mean, anybody gets in trouble today just pointing out the problems of Christianity. Now, in 1791, that became a point in which his house and his lab were burned down by raging drunk mobs, which were organized by the establishment, which was largely led by Lord Shelburne, because he was part of what's called the Venetian Party, because Shelburne was one of the leading corporate leaders in the East India Company, which became largely the British Empire, because they were the mercenary armies that went out and conquered and enslaved and looted on behalf of the British Empire. And because of their immense wealth, they largely took over the government. And yeah, that. So yes, and let's see. Disraeli talked about this. He talks about this in his novels, about the Venetian Party and how they essentially took over, a hostile takeover, stemming from the invasion of William of Orange from... Yes, so largely these Republican movements were just the target, and the Lunar Society was crushed and shut down. Like I said, Priestley had his house and his lab destroyed, and from there he moved to Hackney, where he lectured and preached, although it became increasingly difficult to just do anything because he was a target of hatred, because one, he supported the American Revolution and the French Revolution, which got you in trouble at that time. You were largely ostracized because you did. So at the insistence of some friends, in 1794 he moved to New York City, and then his children helped when they had been buying some land up in Pennsylvania. So they created a farmland, or a big farm, in Northumberland, Pennsylvania, which was kind of way out there in the boonies. He was intending to basically create a utopian kind of society, but okay, it was just too rural, so it didn't really come to fruition. In 1801, he became very sick and had to really restrict his writing and his teaching and his preaching. And in 1803, he published his writing, which I'm going to read from, which is Socrates and Jesus Compared. And in 1804, he died. So, what do you think? Right? Quite a guy. Right. Yeah, I mean, just the idea you would try to combine science and religion, that really freaked a lot of people out. I mean, scientists horrified at the idea that you would try to combine religion and religion with science. Whoa! How radical. I mean, people are still that today. I mean, if you read Kuser or Leibniz or Kepler, I mean, it's no stretch of the imagination to try to figure out how the universe works, and that if you look at it the way they did, I mean, there is an intelligence out there, the way the universe runs. Yeah, because you still get this debate today that is largely just a rehash of the Scopes monkey trial, which, yeah, that's a whole problem. When you hear atheists trying to, like I said, just rehash this stupid debate, or a fraudulent debate, which would make a good video, to actually read the transcript of the Scopes monkey trial. Anybody want to try that? Right. Alright, so that's Joseph Priestley. Yes, so I hope you stick around and learn something. Right? That's a good thing, learning something. Okay. Thanks. See you at the next video. Bye-bye.